My name is Jeff Tenery, Millennial Media. I lead our monetization acquisition team globally for a mobile app platform. And I have some distinguished guests with me today and some friends. Lou Fasulo recently, and congratulations to Lou, the new CEO of Z2 Live. Great to have you here, Lou. Jason Gruber, a friend that I've known for many years, just joined WildTangent as the new Vice President of Business Development. Great to have you, Jason. And also Barry Dorff, who's the Senior Director of Third Party at NGMoco. And great to have you too as well. So we'll jump right in. I've got a bunch of questions. Didn't think I'd get through as fast in 20 minutes, but I want to leave some time for Q&A. So monetization, it's the sweet science of making money. These three gentlemen know a lot about this in mobile, so we're going to go ahead and fire away a little bit like maybe crossfire. I'll hit you guys up with a couple questions. You could always defer to your partners to keep things lively. But the first is, monetization. What does it mean to you? And really, maybe Jason, you could take this first one here. Is to define what mobile monetization means. It means a lot to many different people. So,
sure. Hi, everyone. So monetization in mobile, I think, can mean a lot of different things other than making money. It's sort of how you get there. And when I look at it, there's a lot of different vehicles for making that money, whether it's your download revenue, your in-app purchases, your advertising. I think what's important is to kind of respond to the data that is driving your business instead of sort of the assumptions that you think about your business. And when I say your business, I really mean your customers and your consumers and the people who are using your products. So, we're all not in this for charity in terms of the gaming industry. And there has to be a positive ROI sooner rather than later with each business. And while audience acquisition is always an important part of what you're doing, otherwise you can't make that money, I think the more you think about how you're making that money, how you're sustaining that money, how you're nurturing it, how you're changing it, how you're looking at the different data analytics that drive the money, that's what monetization means. It's sort of not an either-or proposition, it's kind of a how proposition.
Very good. So there's a bunch of, you just mentioned a bunch of methods, right? You've got your in-app, you've got your traditional advertising, you've got all sorts of ways to make money. So I guess, Lou, I'm going to ask you. Sure. You've run the gamut and seen across there. You've worked with probably hundreds of companies. So maybe tell us a little bit. What are some of the methods? How do you guys maybe look at it from a Z2 Live perspective as to how I'm going to monetize with whom, not necessarily specifically with whom, but how are you balancing all of that?
Sure. So we actually look at monetization on kind of three tiers or pillars. The first one is obviously how are you building monetization into gameplay, and kind of starts with design and product management. The next step up is really thinking about merchandising and best practices around pricing and how you do promos. And then that last tier, which is really kind of is amplified by how well you do the first two, is what you generate and kind of the success you achieve with third parties, like Millennial, Tapjoy, Flurry, and these guys that can provide ad networks or incentivized activities. So that's at a high level how we think about it. Certainly a lot of experience. We've definitely found a variety of challenges in working with third parties, and also some great success stories. So it's important to kind of look around and talk to a lot of partners about how they see the world and try to find those partners that align with you on a philosophical level as well as kind of the day-to-day technical and operations.
Okay, thanks. Coming to you, Barry, talking about NGMoco, there seems to be a proliferation of gaming developers morphing into becoming more and more game platforms. All of you have been running around the room for the last couple days looking at all sorts of different platforms. You guys have a great platform, Engage. I know you guys are doing a bunch. Tell us a little bit about, this metamorphosis of going from kind of publishing your own apps to becoming a really strong game platform, and what platform means to maybe some of the folks in the room.
Well, it's Mobage is the name of the platform.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, everyone mispronounces it. When DNA came and acquired NGMoco, and they asked us to be the platform in the West, it came, when it talks about monetization, it came with the the understanding that we would still do first-party titles, but we would understand that we wanted to get to where they were in Japan, which is close to $1 ARPDAU with 5 to 15% of users paying. And I mean, those were just numbers that we never expected to see in the West. So our goal was to create a platform that had tools to allow third-party developers to actually utilize some of that learning and knowledge from Japan and get to those monetization levels that we're seeing in Japan. I mean, when DNA first acquired us, we never thought we'd get to those numbers. And you know, we're the #1 game on iOS and Android right now, and those monetization mechanics that we're seeing work in Japan, we're suddenly tuning and finding work here very successfully.
That's great. Jason, coming back to you, something near and dear to my heart, the traditional advertising world. You worked at AOL, Microsoft, and great success in the advertising front. Is there a home, I've spent time talking to developers over the last 24 hours. Is there a home for traditional advertising to kind of fit into the portfolio a bit as you look at, if you're a gaming developer, you know who are the folks that are really driving your revenue sources, understanding who they are. Is there a home for traditional advertising and more brand advertising?
Absolutely, yes. And I say that with one caveat. It's if you're smart about it. And I say if you're smart about that from a production and product development perspective, a network perspective, and really thinking about the partners who you're working with if you don't have sort of an ad business on your own. So, how an ad and advertising is integrated into the game is critical. One of the things, I just started at WildTangent about 3 weeks ago. And what attracted me to the business after being in the media space for 12 years and the tech industry for 16, 17 years was how they're approaching advertising in games. And they're looking at it in this highly endemic way where advertising, whether it's in their client, whether it's in social games and social partners that are online, or in mobile, they're looking at how the advertising fits into the plumbing of the architecture of the game. I think if you're just going to throw banners up there, one, it's going to degrade your game, and I wouldn't imagine a lot of publishers are going to do that, although I've seen some who do. It's more in how you're tactical about when it goes in, what the ads look like, what are the creative services around it, and then what are the metrics tied around it. So absolutely, there's a place for it. If it has to be a total part of the monetization mix that you're looking at as a developer and a publisher.
Someone pitched me a game the other day using the Unreal Engine, and it all took place in a bathroom. And they're like, look, there's plenty of room for advertising in this game, and they showed around, and as they zoomed in, there was a can of Glade on the toilet, and they're like, see, we could put stuff all over the room, and you can have all this integrated advertising, and it was a perfect example of how it can work very well.
That's a great segue. One of the questions I'm kind of moving around on, but maybe you guys have had some examples, and that's a great example. I don't know if maybe Lou, you've seen where, does rich media have a home? Regardless of it, whether it's for an in-app purchase, driving in-app purchasing, or advertising, or even getting them to buy another app. Is there other kind of forms, or even video? That's another area to be used, not again as just traditional advertising, but there's some really cool executions of advertising maybe that you've seen or had some success with.
Sure. So a key tenet that Jeff mentioned was that the ad experience really needs to work within your game experience. And we've had a variety of different projects we've done. And I think a key part of that is making that content make sense to the gamer, so you're not breaking the world. If you saw a car ad on the wall in that bathroom, it would be a little jarring, right? And so things really need to make sense for players. You don't want to kind of break that third wall of setting up the experience for players and then put some weird ad experience in there. A whole variety of experiences can work, and it's great, like I said earlier, to talk to a bunch of partners about what makes sense given the kind of experience that you're building.
Just about rich media specifically, and I'm going to segment that from video for a second. Rich media is kind of, as I've watched rich media evolve from online when I was at AOL and I watched the first point roll and I wonder campaigns come onto the canvas, and you looked about the impact and load that had on the homepage, where you had milliseconds could be the difference in hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue. But what I find fascinating about rich media in games, and in particular mobile, is that rich media really fundamentally comes down to the creative services and execution, and then how that rich media engine server side is deploying within the game. And I don't mean to get kind of too technical about it. I'm not the technical person for WildTangent, so I'm always on dangerous territory there. But the thing that I find interesting about all the great rich media players that are out there, and by players I mean the companies out there, whether it's Crisp, Celtra, Medialits, and even what we're doing at WildTangent could be understood with Brand Boost as a rich media element, is that you have a team of people at the company who work with the brand and agency to systematically integrate in an advertisement in a functional way in the game. When it's templatized and it's just like a banner, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it doesn't. But rich media specifically, I think, has a very strong future in terms of the monetization inside games.
Very cool. Moving away from the creative side, going to data. Without getting into any IP or proprietary information, Barry, I don't know, like when you look at the way you're managing the platform, how are you using data? Are there any kind of tricks of the trade, maybe a smaller developer might have, and like, how do I need to view this data so that I can get somebody to buy more, step up to the next level of in-app purchasing?
I think that's a 3-hour question. To simplify it, right? You look at the long-term value of a user. So, we have Tiny Tower on our platform, and we have Rage of Bahamut, two third-party games at opposite ends of the spectrum when we look at the data, right? So, Tiny Tower doesn't monetize as well as Rage of Bahamut, but it's got a lot more users, and it's easier to acquire users. So you just look at the long-term value of a user, what our take is, and what the eCPNU, what the cost of acquiring that user is. And it's just a simple math equation. And the thing is every game's going to be different. So the retention rates on Tiny Tower are amazing, and the retention rates on Rage aren't as good as Tiny Tower. So it's not like I could say, well, what you want to make sure that you have a 50% day one retention rate, and you want to have a 14% day 30 retention rate, and this is what those mean to us. But we can't say that because every game's different and every game monetizes different. So you really need to just understand the genre of your game and the targets within that genre, and they all differ. And when you work with us, that's what we teach you. That's what we show you what you want to shoot for.
That's cool. Lou, do you want to expound on that at all? Just the way
Sure.
Z2 looks at it.
On one level, I would say data says great time to introduce ads. CPIs are going through the roof, and it's probably pretty smart to take advantage of that. Just kind of segueing off Barry's comments, different gameplay or different games monetize in different fashions and are really experienced in different ways. It doesn't mean that the metrics should all really hit the same bar in terms of retention or monetization or total lifetime value. It's really important to kind of have the right perspective on what you're building and what good results are for that game style. And then that game style is actually going to help inform what's the right monetization path, whether it be a very strong ad mix or more in-app purchase, long-term gameplay.
Cool. Lou, staying with you to a question we talked about before. You're looking at smaller gaming developers. So a lot of the folks perhaps in the room here aspiring to be maybe perhaps acquired or a part of a bigger solution. What do you look for? What are the traits? What's the DNA you're looking for? What are you looking for that might attract you to acquire a company?
So I think those kind of conversations really start with how do values line up. And at Z2, we're really focused on great gameplay. Gameplay first, and kind of building monetization along with that. We think that what's been fun will continue to be fun regardless of the monetization model. And then kind of from there, how do they think about the ecosystem in a really holistic way? Do they really understand and do they have a strong philosophy on how different types of monetization work together, how production, management, and design and monetization all balance each other. Those are some of the starting points, at least.
Yeah, I mean, so DNA does acquire a lot of companies, and in our sector, we're in a little bit of a bubble, right? Because we all get calls from recruiters every day, and moving around from companies, it's not hard to move around. Some people just moved around, but what you want to do when you acquire companies, you want to make sure that the culture aligns with your culture, because retaining that talent when you acquire the company is the #1 goal in retaining that company. So apart from the values have to align, and then you have to make sure that the team is happy and protected and able to thrive, because if you acquire a company and you lose half the employees, then you just lost the entire value of that company.
Yeah. So having in business development functions prior to WildTangent at Microsoft, AOL, and Adobe, even going back to my early part of my career when I was at Photodisk and we were acquired by Getty Images, which then went on a tear to acquire like 9 million companies, I'll just say, having been on due diligence teams and then post-acquisition teams, the single biggest thing, and I have no doubt that these laws of gravity apply to the gaming industry, is that it's team culture, and it's the people. Because if you just pay a premium, you lock people up for whatever long, they can still go out the door. And so if you're not aligned, and where you have like a mission around great products, and if they don't see it the same way and they don't jive, it ain't gonna work.
When we partnered with Big Sandwich Games in Vancouver, we actually worked together for about 4 months, just literally getting to know each other before we had serious conversations about a transaction. And that get to know you transaction, establish our cultures and other before we had together a long time transaction, build great value together. You can kind of figure that out together a long time.
Now you guys all mentioned some great things.
Together, you can.
Is really important when you're looking at maybe some of these smaller development companies? I mean, obviously, maybe some of these smaller. We're not in an Instagram situation, perhaps. That's a phenomenon. We're not in an Instagram. Tell me a situation, perhaps. I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to make it more interactive. We're not in an Instagram. I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to make it more. Just what is monetization kind of mean?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to make it more.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But it all have to be, and your values have to be aligned. So if they think about monetization the same way, if they really are thinking about how to monetize the users and how to build around what the user wants. We have a word that we use at DNA and NGMoco. It's delight, right? We only want to delight our users. We never want to have any IAP that blocks a user to unblock them, because that's not a positive, delightful experience. IAP that blocks feel the same way we do, where everything in the game is about delighting these users. That's a great first step.
Do you guys want to?
That's a great first.
Do you guys want to?
So definitely similar alignment there. I would also say that they don't necessarily need to be great at monetization. Necessarily need to be great at games that people really care. If they can build great experiences, they can be monetized.
Yeah, I'd say how we look at it at WildTangent as a platform where we have
a word that we use at
help developers Tangent as a platform monetize their games through buying.
A word that we use at
and also monetizing with media. I'd say we're looking at other companies and also partnering. I'd say strength, but I also want to extend into new areas of monetization. So if there's something we're not doing, and then we can then translate into a broader developer reach, we want to translate into a broader developer reach. We want doing, and then we can then
I don't know if we have a
So if there's something we're not doing,
microphone.
new areas of monetization.
Give you a Phil Donahue and get out there and jump around. Jerry Springer. Let's ask some questions. I'm sure there's some folks in the audience that would like to ask some questions around maybe a little bit more specifically that might help them maybe a little bit more make more money in this ecosystem. That would like to ask some questions around questions in the audience as we bring up the lights. That's perfect.
There are actually people here, I can see.
I know. It's bright. The gentleman over there. The gentleman over there.
So I have a question for Z2 Live. So one of the games that I found really innovative,
The lights, that's perfect.
going off the radar now, but I really enjoyed Trade Nations. So I have a question for kind of a peer-to-peer economy. And so I'm curious what you guys learned from, I guess, kind of running that peer-to-peer economy, kind of like a World of Warcraft marketplace on the iOS market, and how you would go about monetizing that.
Great problem.
Well,
How you would go about
a lot of
monetizing
great learnings there. That game, we started development of that in, I want to say, February 2010. February 2010, about 2 years. February. It's a little dated in the sense that our thinking as a company has moved way forward. We've learned a lot from that experience, both in
Great problem.
interact with each other. We have learned a lot from that. We still believe in, which is meaningful benefit for players for meaningful social interactions. Meaningful benefit for players for games between and meaningful social interaction. We kind of feel like the virus we still believe in, which is maybe not always as fun for players. Meaningful benefit for players, although certainly valuable for developers. Anyway, with regard to the economy, we feel. Something very interesting along. Anyway, with the next 6 to certainly valuable that will kind of. Anyway, with those learnings, so I would just state that will kind of.
Other questions?
Anyway,
We have a couple, two there. We'll come up your way.
So at one point you referenced Tiny
kind of a peer-to-peer
and those are both very different, very different games. If you were building a portfolio of games, would you, do you think it's important to have that type of diversity? Have some games that are, very monetization heavy, and some games that are, Tiny Tower is still monetization heavy, but, or would you rather have a portfolio of games that were all Tiny Towers, or all Rage of Bahamut's, or a mix of both?
No, I love diversity, and if
Referenced
card battle games. No, I love diversity.
referenced Tiny.
Steve Jobs said, right, if you don't cannibalize your users, someone else will. But I believe that you want to put enough of them on there, but you got to have diversity, and I definitely look for portfolio, and there's a lot of games that are got to have diversity, and anyone want to pitch us a game, let me know. Will, but
Let's chat.
I was curious if you had a chance to be granted a wish from Apple and Google.
got to have diversity, and
Lowering the from Apple. What will it be, and will it be different for the two players?
I'd love more insight into their what they promote and what they feature. I would love that to be a very clear process,
Games
which
that are,
it clearly is not right now.
I don't know
what they feature.
I think the big one that I'd like to see is I think iTunes is a 1995 piece of technology that has a weird search engine. The algorithm probably doesn't make much sense, and if that isn't immovable, I would love to see all of the innovation that Apple is capable of go right into that.
Excellent. That gentleman right down there.
You talked about advertising as still being a viable monetization method. Do you also see that as a method to sort of have a ad-supported version of a game and then convert users to a premium game to get out of ads, or just ads purely continuing on?
I have a very ad-centric view on that. I feel like I'm going to stay consistent on that. I think each game is different. The intent of the game is different, and how you mix advertising into your overall monetization goals is important. So there could be a scenario where a free ad-driven game for whatever sets of reason leads to a premium game. But the value there that you're really specifically hitting at is they hate ads, so they want to turn them off. So it's sort of like Pandora to some extent, where I don't know what the number, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's less than 5% are on their premium service. And then ads are integrated throughout with mobile completely over-indexing. So the whole value there is in getting rid of the ads. You know, I can't say that that is going to be, that would dictate for a lot of game developers or publishers in general in any medium. So, but I could see a scenario where that works out. I don't know.
I would never do that model just because it's, you know, you're not delighting users. What you're doing is you're frustrating users if they don't want to see the ads and then they're paying to get rid of that frustration. That's not a moment when they a purchase that we want the users to have, right? When users purchase a card pack in Rage of Bahamut and they get that super rare card, those are the moments we want users to have when they spend money, not to get rid of something that's frustrating them.
So I would say look at the With Friends franchise, because I think they've done a great job of doing exactly that. And not to run too hardcore counter to Barry, but I think that shutting down a model right now in favor of thinking everything should be free is probably jumping the gun. I don't think all experiences make sense that way, and so I would just continue to explore.
More? Excellent. Yes, go ahead. Any other questions? And that's a really great way. Let me do it. There is another. Okay, here you go. Sorry.
Hey, first off, thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Just wondering, when you look at the different platforms, do you think that you should have uniformity in terms of pricing, or for example, the Amazon presentation, slightly upmarket consumer, maybe they'll tolerate a bit of a higher price point. Apple seems to be a situation where you can charge a little more perhaps than the Android market. Wondering what your guidance and thoughts on that are.
We're with the #1 game on iOS and Android, we're seeing the same monetization on Android as we are on iOS right now with our games. So that rumor about Apple is not true with what we're seeing. It's slightly higher, but it's a few percentage points. It's not much. So I think there can be uniformity across, and the Android market will get more mature. It's less mature than the iOS market, but catching up fast. And if everyone had a Samsung Galaxy S2 or better device, then we'd be a lot happier.
I would lean toward considering those strategies on a geo basis, but probably not on a platform basis.
Yep. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just wanted to just thank our panelists. Thanks for coming on board. And please do take some time afterwards to grab us and ask some more questions. But what I love about the panel is it was a really diverse group that looked at the whole marketplace. So we appreciate your time.